hard work towards researching, mapping, and collating data related to climate adaptations and practices of the farming communities of the dry zone of Sri Lanka. This research covers 24 Graminidadari divisions in 4 districts. The impact of climate change might be global. However, the effects of the impact are proportionate to the social, political, and economic and geographical factors of each individual community, meaning climate change might be global, but the impact it has is proportionate to the marginal helpless communities. It affects all of us differently. Communities in the dry zone are greater. So it remains the responsibility and policymakers to ensure the well-being of these marginalized communities. Which brings us to the 4 presentations that will be presented going forward. The first of these, titled Observed Trends in Future Climate Projections of Extreme Climate Indices in the Dry Zone, will be presented by Dr. Shiromani Jawardena, National Consultant for Adaptation of the Project for Enhanced Transparency Framework for the AF Climate Change Secretariat and Director, Department of Meteorology, retired. Dr. Shiromani Jawardena, a meteorologist, has more than 24 years of experience in the field of meteorology and possesses a good record of working with international agencies. She is a member of several international and national technical committees related to climate change adaptation and climate services. She was the director of the weather forecasting at the Department of Meteorology in Sri Lanka from 2020 to 2023. Presently, she is attached to the Climate Change Secretariat as a national adaptation consultant to the project of Enhanced Transparency Network, ETF, for the AFOLU sector. Her research interests are climate change, climate variability, and future climate projections. I would now like to cordially invite Dr. Shiromani Jawardena to present her work.
Thank you very much for the nice introduction. So my topic today is to talk about the historical trends and future climate projections of extreme climate indices in Sri Lanka. For actual adaptation, we need to identify the risk first. Then to address that risk, we have to develop plans, strategies, and then implement action. So historical trends provide us information about how climate has already changed, and future climate projections shows us how it will evaluate in the future. So these are the outline of my presentation. First, let me talk about the global projections of climate risk. These are actually based on the latest Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change report, assessment report, 6th assessment report. So if you consider carbon dioxide concentration, it is the highest at, if we compare to the last 2 million years. Now we have highest carbon dioxide concentration in our atmosphere. Then sea level rise is fastest during last 3,000 years, and then Arctic sea ice decline is also lowest level at past 1,000 years, and glacier retreat also unprecedented if you compare with the last 2,000 years. So the global exposure to multi-sector risk will be 4 times more if we go for 1.5 degrees to 3.3 degrees warming in future. So according to the IPCC report, that excess warming arises due to this anthropogenic warming absorbed by the ocean, 90% absorbed by the ocean, then land absorbed 5%, melting ice sheets goes 3%, and on atmosphere only absorb only 1%. According to their report, ocean will absorb 2 to 4 times more heat if global warming is, even though if we limit to 2 degrees, and 5 to 7 times higher in higher emission. So we cannot avoid this ocean acidification, extreme and so events like at present we are also experiencing the El Nino in the Pacific Ocean, and then changes in tracks and intensity of tropical cyclone, shift in fish population, and this affects the food security. And if we consider the land, current level of warming, there's a moderate risk of increase in dryland water scarcity, soil erosion, vegetation loss, fire damage, coastal degradation, and crop yield decline. At 2-degree level, yeah, the risk for the food instability will be very high, and at 3-degree level, there will be a high risk for vegetation loss, fire damage, dryland water scarcity become very high. So let's discuss about the trends, temperature and rainfall trends. If you compare the literature, so there are some consistence about the increasing trend in temperatures. Many publications identified that increasing temperatures in Sri Lanka, but when we compare to the rainfall, there are different findings. Some mention that no coherent increase or decrease in rainfall trend, decrease in trend in annual rainfall stations in southeastern and southern part, decrease in rainfall at high elevation and increase in rainfall in lowlands. So this type of different findings there. Because the reason is actually they have used different methodologies and different time periods. So to address that, World Meteorological Organization, they developed this extreme climate indices. So based on different using temperature and precipitation, using different type of indices, like there are some percentile indices, absolute indices, threshold indices, duration indices, and other indices. So these indices, they have developed the software also, so any country can run. So we can compare because there's a consistency about the methodologies and everything. So when we run these indices to Sri Lanka, this study is actually for whole Sri Lanka, but unfortunately we couldn't use DAFNA data because we have more than 10-year gap in missing data in the DAFNA because of the conflict we have experienced decades ago. So because of that conflict, we don't have data, so we cannot run this for the JASNA. So except that other stations actually we have run. So it shows us different findings. Increasing the of temperature is evident. Like I mentioned earlier, it's obvious. But one important thing is the difference between day maximum temperature and minimum temperature. That is day temperature and night temperature. We found decreasing trend. That means night temperature is increasing faster than day temperatures. That is obvious in the dry zone as well as in wet zone. So I think this agricultural people knows how important of this dynamic temperature rate, especially for potato. And then when we run this for the this rainfall indices, it shows us there is an annual rainfall, there is an increase in trend even in the dry zone. Here the red triangle shows us the increase in trend. Larger triangle, that is under the 95th confidence level, and this small one, the 90th one. So 75% of the stations show significant trend of increasing annual precipitation. But other thing, important thing is that we can give some thresholds like about a millimeter rainfall, 20, 30 like that. So this also will show increasing trend. And when we consider the extreme rainfall, so we found most dry zones. Like here we have Anuradhapura, Trinco, and Batito, where it shows significant increase in trends in daily intensity of rainfall, and there are some other indices like maximum of rainfall above 95th percentile, rainfall above 99th percentile, and then 5-day consecutive rainfall. So these are shows increasing trend, especially in the Anuradhapura and Batito shows us a very significant increase in trends. Actually, climate change, it shows us like changes in rainfall. There will be more and more extreme events related to rainfall as well as temperatures. So it will impact agriculture, water, industry, health, and ecosystem. So we need to go for mitigation to reduce greenhouse gases as well as to address the vulnerability. Actually, we need to know what has happened based on the trends I have explained earlier as well as based on the future climate projections. So the climate models or Earth system models can run for next 100 years, and it gives us some idea about what will happen in future. For future climate projections also important. It gives us uh, what does the future hold. So they develop this type of climate models. So the important part of the climate model, because these climate models run for like for globe as well as for next 100 years future as well as past, because we need to compare this results with our observed rainfall. Then only we can get idea how well these models can predict our rainfall. So that resolution is important. So this is how we evaluate evolution of these climate models. Earlier actually it was like 500 kilometers. So whole Sri Lanka will be in one or two grid boxes. So each grid box gives us one value for rainfall, temperature, and other climate variables. So it's very important to go for a high resolution model. So right now actually they have increased it up to 100 kilometer resolution. Some they have 50 kilometer also. So you can see how well it represents one it go for high resolution. In addition to that, when we talk about the future climate, we need to know what will be the greenhouse gas concentration in our atmosphere in future. Because there are a lot of uncertainties, because this concentration of greenhouse gas is depending on our emission, the land use, land cover changes, then population, economic growth, technological development, whether we can easily access this uh, renewable energy, which can give us for a low cost. So then we will go for that. Otherwise, we will go for this fossil fuel burning. So there are a lot of uncertainties. So intergovernmental panel for climate change. So they have given several efficient scenarios. If we uh, truly fully mitigate, we will greenhouse gas emissions. We will end up with this one, and if we gradually do that, we will end up at this level. And if we go for like what we are already practicing, business as usual, we will end up at this level. So there are low emission scenarios, moderate emission scenarios, as well as high emission scenarios. So for developing these projections to Sri Lanka, actually we downscale global models because we don't have facilities to run this type of model. So global models we can downscale into our regional level. That means post-resolution impact assessment. So for that, actually, we have six global models. One from Meteor France, then other one Japanese meteorological administration, and then two US models and one Australian models. So because when we compare with the model climatology with our observed rainfall, we found these six models are able to capture the bimodal pattern. Because in Sri Lanka, we have bimodal pattern of rainfall. We have two peaks, one in May, other one in October, November, so that they were able to capture as well as they were able to capture our spatial rainfall pattern. And so using these six models, we developed future climate projections for two emission scenarios: moderate emission scenario representing RCP 4.5, and high emission scenario representing RCP 8.5. So we found that northeast monsoon rainfall is going to decrease in future, especially dry zone. It is very drastic decline based on this model predictions. So especially this eastern part of the country, they receive 40% of the annual rainfall from this northeast monsoon rain, and then second intermonsoon, first intermonsoon, March, April rain also we found it declining, especially under high emission scenario. Then southwest monsoon rain and this second intermonsoon rain, both we found increasing trend, especially this wet zone. We saw that very high amount of rainfall predicted in future. So regarding the southwest monsoon, it's the consistent with the other global findings also, because most of the projections that research findings related to the future climate projections, they identify this increasing in southwest monsoon over this. Then secondly, the monsoon also we found increasing trend. Overall, regarding the annual rainfall, we found that especially short projections next 20 years from 2020 to 2040, there's a decline in rainfall in the dry zone, and but wet zone it's increasing. But when we go for long term, it shows us whole Sri Lanka we get increasing rate. But the problem is that this rain, especially because the unseasonal rain, especially all this dry zone, they come from the thunderstorms. So thunderstorms are very short, developing very short areas, which gives very high intense rain within like 1 hour or half an hour period of time. So that is issue. It is not like normal monsoon rain which we experience throughout the day. When it's obvious that temperature is increasing, and when we run this heat wave frequencies, for actually we run only for Colombo, because heat island effects also contributed for excess heat in addition to heat wave. Uh, it shows us we are not experiencing heat wave until 2030, but then under both emission scenarios, we can see sharp increasing trend in heat waves over Colombo. So these are the extreme indices, like I mentioned earlier, for future projections over dry zone. So you can see mean maximum temperatures increase up to 2100. Maximum of maximum temperatures, maximum of also increasing, mean minimum temperature also increasing. In addition to that, extreme rainfall indices like maximum 5-day precipitation amount, extreme wet days, that is number of days above 95th percentile, uh, intensity of rainfall, and and very wet day precipitation and annual rainfall also. We can see that year-to-year variation, with the year-to-year variation, it shows some increasing trend. Decreasing trend we found actually Ghana temperature range and number of cool nights and number of cool days. Those are decreasing, so gives us decreasing trend. So because of this increasing trend in extreme temperatures and rainfall, so we will experience more and more floods and landslides or erosion, more runoff and less infiltration, as well as droughts also we can experience, because this, even though it shows an increase in trend, it all comes from the extreme rainfall. For example, if some area the annual rainfall is 900, so if they receive like 100 rainfall for 10 days, it gives us like above normal rainfall. So the cumulative rainfall doesn't show us much because it's average accumulation of all. Then increase in temperature, there will be more energy demand, more heat-related health issues, less labor productivity, and more evaporation and evapotranspiration, water loss from soil, water bodies, and plants. So these are the climate change impacts from developing countries or developing countries. So climate change will increase extreme temperature and temperature event changes in rainfall pattern. So will result more frequent flood as well as drought. For example, if you remember this sphere, Till August 28, there are like more than 100,000 people. Disaster Management Center actually they provide this water for more than nearly 100,000 people. But then in October, just after 1 month, they have to give there were people 75,000 people were affected due to the flood. So within short period, this type of drastic change we can experience in future. So according to the sixth assessment report, new type of unprecedented extreme events can occur due to climate change. It will be larger in magnitude, more frequent, and new extremes, different timing, new locations, and different timing and new combination. For example, if you remember the cyclonic Mandus, which was not crossed Sri Lanka, but it crossed Tamil Nadu coast. But the cyclone shielded Sri Lanka. That radiation was shielded by the thick clouds of the cyclone for 3 consecutive days, so which gives us very low temperatures. This was this cold weather affects the livestock industry, especially in the northern part of the country. So this type of because we have never experienced this type of cold weather associated with the tropical cyclones, but new type of extreme events also we can experience in a future. So in addition to that, climate change will have an impact on all countries in the globe, but we are the most vulnerable countries. It will affect the population growth, poverty, and rapid aggravate the population growth, poverty, and rapid urbanization. So without serious adaptation, climate change likely to push millions of people further into poverty and limit the opportunities for sustainable development, escape from poverty. Climate change is likely to reduce economic growth in developing countries. Significant investments in climate change adaptation are necessary. That's why this forum we will discuss about how you have provide some adaptation strategy for dry zone vulnerable communities to overcome the effects of the climate change. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dr. Chawatana. I would now like to invite our second presenter, Mr. Shanta Hevage, Senior Researcher at Harty. His presentation is titled Understanding Climate Change Impacts on Women and Children in Agrarian Communities of the Dry Zone in Sri Lanka. Mr. Shanta Hevage is a Senior Researcher attached to the Environmental and Water Resources Management Division at Harty. His research interests include the areas under environmental science, food security, and agricultural extension on climate-smart agriculture in Sri Lanka, insights for future inventions. I would now like to cordially invite Mr. Shanta Hevage to present his work.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. The title of the research that we conducted with the collaboration of is Climate Adaptive Farm Practices and Climate Adaptation of Vulnerable Groups in the Dry Zone of Sri Lanka. Actually, we conducted this research for the last 2 years, starting from November 2021 to September 2023. In this presentation and following two presentations are to present our key findings of this research, followed by a kind of discussion. So in this presentation, we mainly focus on the situation of women and children under the climate change perspectives, then followed by household food security, and the last one is on climate adaptation and climate adaptive farming practices. Since the background of this research was discussed in last few speeches, so I can skip the initial part, but I would like to have some attention to that. We know that climate change affects disproportionately on different groups, particularly when you consider the horizon of Sri Lanka. Farmers, those who have very limited access to irrigation water, are considered to be the most vulnerable to the climate change impacts. So even within these resource poor farming groups, women and children are more vulnerable, largely due to the less access to land and other resources that needed for the agricultural production, and there are less participation in decision making, as well as the reduced mobility. So we know that adaptation is the key for combating climate change, to overcome the climate change impact, particularly in the agriculture sector. And of course, to have effective adaptation, that process should address the needs of different groups. So in that sense, we have to identify the adaptation needs of different groups, particularly marginalized groups, as mentioned, women and children in those farming communities. So under this background, the research had four main broad objectives. Identify the effects of climate change on marginalized communities, especially on women and children, and understand the different climate adaptive farming practices and set provision and coping strategies, both in Yala and Maha seasons. Then identify the extent of implementation of existing agriculture project and programs, in particularly in the study locations. And finally, reduce policy recommendations to improve the protection of vulnerable communities. So for the information of the participant joining via Zoom, so I have put the definitions, particularly for the Maha and Yala seasons. Maha season, the major cropping season, falls during northeast monsoon, starting from September to March in the following year. Maha literally means bigger season. This is the main cropping season that produces the largest food production of the country. Then Yala season is effective during the period from May to August. Then Yala literally means the lesser. Water scarcity is the main issue associated with the Yala season. So, as the main data collection tools in our study, we conducted the household survey. Over 1,058 farm households, particularly rain-fed and mine-irrigated farm households. We conducted this research study over 4 districts, covering 10 regional secretariat divisions and 9 agrarian service center areas, covering 25 government divisions. We use the stratified random sampling procedure to select the farming households from those 4 districts. So apart from household survey that we conducted in 2 rounds for 2021, 2022 Maha and 2022 Yala cropping seasons, we conducted focus group discussions with the farm leaders, then women organization members, and of course we conducted key informal interviews with the farming community as well as grassroots level officers, division and district level officers, those who are working in that agrarian community, and climate action projects and programs. As mentioned, we use the multi-stage stratified sampling method to draw our sample from our 4 districts. Then key findings that age distribution, we observed that 48% of the population comprises individuals in the age group less than 30 years. So it means that youth and children population contribute to the major part of the population. So actually this information provides guidance for making informed decision and taking measures regarding job creation, particularly for the youth, as well as for the better education facilities for the children in these climate vulnerable communities. Education attainment, we observe that the majority of the population are having education up to the level of junior secondary education. After grade 11, we observe there's a high dropout rate both girls and boys. Girls enrollment after the senior secondary education level is much higher than the boys. This implies that education level of this farming community, the female education level is higher than the male's education level. However, we observe there's a high disparity in the employment because male employment rate was higher than the female employment rate. We can see it in the next slides, this situation. Because our main target population was farming community, that major source of income of those households were farming, contributing to 73% of the population, our sample. As I mentioned that there's an alarming rate of unemployment among female members of this community, that all districts, especially Kinnoki and Hambantota, this rate was and the other two districts, Bangalore and Mondra. Then access to and control of agricultural resources, in common low extent of land owned by households, so having the highest proportion of such land, 1 acre, both upland and low. Then when it comes to the ownership of land, that 67% of land is owned by male members of the household. That means that female members' ownership of the land is less, so their access to the land, the main resource of agriculture is lesser than the male counterparts in the same household. Then the decision making on cultivation practices are also dominated by male members. At 80% of the households, mainly decision making on cultivation is made by male members. Due to lack of land ownership and prevailing gender norms, there is space and opportunities for women to access land resources and participate in decision making regarding cultivation activities is largely limited. In access to agricultural extension, because for the climate adaptation, knowledge dissemination through agricultural extension services is a must. So that we observe that most of the agricultural extension workers are working with the main members of the farm households. That it reflects in even most of the training programs offered for commercial level agricultural practices and technology related programs that attended by male members accounting 69%. The training programs received by female members are mostly limited to home gardening and compost production, like non-commercial level training technologies. As a result, opportunities for women to attend training programs on commercial crop cultivation are limited. Actually, this negatively affect their adaptation to the climate change impact. Then access to credit. Interestingly, we observe that both men and women have similar proportion, similar level of access to credit in all 4 districts. Here, the female access to the loan is little higher than male, it's accounting for 51%. That of the population, 45% of the households have obtained loans. Credit, that majority of loans or credit have obtained for the agricultural purposes. Again, that loans received by female members are used for the activities mainly dominated by male members, that is agriculture activities. Then women and children in the communities and the position under the changing climate scenarios, that we observe that because of the water scarcity, almost all the villages we observe that male members are temporarily shift to the neighboring villages or sometimes distant areas away from their houses to seeking employment opportunities, both in on-farm and non-farm sector. So in these scenarios, that there's an additional burden on the female members or women at the household, rising child protection concerns, limited mobility of women, and heavy unpaid care burden on household responsibilities on women. So this again restrict their opportunity to be involved in livelihood activities. Again, we observe that women continue to occupy lower layer of the food value chain, especially even there are some opportunities in the on-farm sector that women can work as agricultural laborers. But still, the wage rate is significantly lower than men. We observe 25 to 30% lesser wage rate for women. In situation under the changing climate, observe that school attendance is negatively impacted during heavy rain period, especially in Trinity district and Radiclo district. Mostly that roads were not in good condition, regulated condition, and that school attendance of children during the rain season is negatively affected. Then again, the scarcity of available labor sometimes forces children in the family to engage in their parents' agricultural related activities. It has also observed both in Montagal and Ladiklo district. Then in Montagal district, we observed sometimes farmers do not have enough land extended in the village area. They have to move to a distant area to do cultivation, particularly in the rain season. So sometimes that entire family have to shift to that place or those locations. So in that cases, most of the time, children's school attendance is negatively affected. I think the policy implication in this part of the research will be discussed after the third presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hevage. I would now like to cordially invite Ms. Tushara Dharmavardhana, researcher at Harty, to present the research findings in terms of investigating climate-adapted farming practices and food security resilience in the dry zone of Sri Lanka. Ms. Tushara Dharmavardhana is a researcher attached to the Hector Kobrakadu Agrarian Research and Training Institute. She has done research on the livelihood development, environmental economics, poverty and food security. Most recently, she engaged with the projects of climate-adapted farming practices and climate adaptation of vulnerable groups in the dry zone of Sri Lanka, leveraging the integrated e-extension services to minimize the Sri Lankan agricultural sector's vulnerability to climate shocks and unveiling the successes and challenges of climate-smart agriculture in Sri Lanka, insights for future interventions. Over to you, Ms. Dharmavardhana.
Good morning to all of you. A very good morning to all of you. Before moving to my presentation, I would like to give a brief introduction. In the recent past, Sri Lanka has production of agricultural products, prices, high food inflation, and rising of high food prices. Also, such hardships were due to unexpected changes in weather patterns, which ultimately resulted to adverse impacts of food security. As a As a result of that, dry farming community facing challenges in securing adequate and nutritious
food on their table, especially resource poor vulnerable community as well. Therefore, under the broad theme of this study, I am going to present the second presentation titled as Food Security Status Among Vulnerable Farming Communities in Sri Lanka. Hence, we had an attempt to identify the acute food security status of the farming community in the dry zone and to provide policy directives to ensure the level of food security within this community. Also, we use the same data set for this analysis. Food security status was measured using the CARI method, a consolidated approach for reporting indicators of food security, which was developed by the World Food Programme. And it is very important to see what is experienced by this dry zone farming community at the ground level in terms of climate events they face and how they face challenges in securing water for their irrigation purposes, their cropping patterns, and also how they secure drinking water sources. In order to in order to in order to secure the water security and ultimately which leads to the food security at the end of the day. And I'm going to explain the key areas of this during my first presentation. As all of you know, this community is an agricultural community whose main livelihood is agriculture. On the other hand, irrigation plays a critical role in agriculture, which is scarce in the dry zone of Sri Lanka. That's why I'm going to highlight more about this irrigation water in my presentation, which secures the water security for agriculture. Irrespective of the geographical location, main source of water for larger portion of land is rainwater. And also, groundwater sources such as tube wells and effluent wells are the primary water sources of irrigated areas in Kilnochi and Batticaloa districts. However, these water sources can be impacted by the climate change, which leads to the reduction of availability of groundwater. For example, we can say when there is a prolonged drought, it is difficult to get the farmers to access for water due to reduction of groundwater levels. As you can see in this figure, the most common water source for agriculture is canal irrigation in Hambantota district. So farmers in Hambantota district can survive throughout the year compared to other three districts. When considering the cropping pattern of the lowlands, except Hambantota district, many lowland land plots were cultivated during only Maha season and fallow in Yellow season due to the water shortage. As an adaptive measure, it is recommended to cultivate less water demanding other field crops in the Yellow season. When it comes to the cropping patterns of the uplands, cropping patterns in the uplands, main crops grown in uplands in Kilnochi is perennial crops such as fruit crops and coconut. In Batticaloa district, in uplands, the farmers mostly practicing mixed cropping, while in Hambantota and Monragal district, they are practicing cultivation of other field crops. Drinking water is another aspect which is to be considered seriously in this situation to secure the water security. According to survey results, except Hambantota, all other three districts are facing challenges in securing quality and safe drinking water. In case of Hambantota, it is due to the development activities that has taken place in Hambantota. As a result of that, most of the areas were provided with pipe-borne water. In here, we consider safe water sources as pipe-borne water, common tap lines, filtered water, and bowser water, and domestic wells, common wells, common wells, domestic wells are considered as unsafe water. Up to that, I explained regarding the water security, and from this point, I'm going to explain the food consumption score and food security status of this community, which was estimated using the carry method developed by the World Food Program. In Sri Lanka, at present, we are facing high inflation. And as you can see, 83% of the sample households are coming under the food, acceptable food consumption score, while 2% are coming under the poor food consumption score. With respect to the district-wise variation, Kilinochchi has the highest food consumption score, and the Monravale is having the lowest food consumption score. When considering the consumption of different food groups across the 4 districts, you can see cereals, pulses are the food groups that are consumed by the majority of the households, and lower consumption of protein-based products and dairy products are limited by these community because of the spike of pricing food prices. When they fail to have enough and adequate food on their table, they tend to go for adapt coping strategies. As I mentioned here, they have adapted 5 main coping strategies as less preferred and less expensive food, reduced number of meals eaten, restrict consumption of adults, borrowing foods, and limiting the portion size of meals. As a whole, a majority of the households they adapted less preferred and less expensive food compared followed by the limiting portion size of meals. At the end, I want to explain the food security status of this community. As you can see, more than 83% of farming households coming under food secure category. That means this finding implies that there is a this farming committee has maintained the food security level for a certain extent. And with respect to the district-wise variation, Kilnochi district remained remarkably ahead the other districts, and the Moral district accounts for the lowest food security level across these four districts. And thank you very much for your cooperation. I think Ms. Kiran will explain the adoption strategies and policy implications related to food security and all the other gender aspects and all those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anuradhana. Ladies and gentlemen, our final presentation, titled Climate Adapted Farming Practices, Bridging Research to Policy, will be presented by Ms. T.P. Munavire, Senior Researcher at Harty. Ms. Munavire focuses on research studies under water, land use, and agricultural policies, and under that, her specialized areas in research includes the integrated water resource management, climate change, agricultural resources, of environmental related issues. Ms. Munavire's current research endeavors aims to enhance the understanding of how economic incentives impact the supply of agricultural products and the interplay between agricultural production and environmental sustainability. Ms. Munavire, over to you.
Thank you and good morning, all of you. So,
Hello. How are you?
okay, after listening to a series of presentations on how we have done our research and what are our main findings, main focus of my presentation is how farmers have adapted to those climate changes and what are the policy implications that we have derived from our research findings. So, as I said, main focus of this presentation is what is the level of farmer awareness on climate change, as Dr. Shiromani explained, and all of us are talking about like these forums, climate change is happening, we have to adapt. And then we wanted to know how farmers have understood this climate change. And then we are going to talk about how they have adapted into this perceived climate change and what are their strategies and the policy implications. So, up to now we have discussed it is important to be Sri Lanka is vulnerable to climate change and our agriculture sector is specifically vulnerable and dry zone people are very targeted group of this climate change impacts, and we need to do this adaptation, and government and NGOs and all the stakeholders are talking about this adaptation and taking policy initiatives and programs at the field level to increase this adaptation and increase the resilience of these vulnerable communities. And to promote these successful adaptations in agriculture sector, we have to understand that it is important to understand this farmers' perception of climate change and ongoing adaptation measures and how they are making the decisions on how to adapt. Those are very important, I think, even though we are talking about this adaptation, we have to understand how farmers have get that information. So, and also it is important to promote these climate adaptive practices. These effective policy instruments are very important. So, objective of my presentation is to understand how farmers' perception of climate change and examine how household adaptation strategies are taking place at the field level, and explore the relationship between socio-economic factors and farmers' adaptation behavior, and provide policymakers and the practitioners with insight to develop targeted interventions that promote the resilience of the agriculture sector in Sri Lanka. And for this one, we have this descriptive and multiple linear regression analysis. I'm not going to talk more about this, how we have done the analysis. We are mainly focusing on our findings and what are the policy implications. So first we were asked about, as I said in the introduction, how these farmers have understood this climate change. We have asked whether they are aware of this term climate change, and irrespective of the districts, 83% of the farmers are aware about this term climate change. That is not the correct, accurate definition for the climate change, but they have some sense of what is climate change, and they have gained this knowledge through specifically the media, that is television, TV, the radio programs and newspapers. And I would like to highlight here that the knowledge they have gained through extension training is very limited. That is, we can highlight that farmers have not gained a proper understanding of the climate change in the form of formal information. And then, as Dr. Shiromani explained in her presentation very nicely, this climate change, how it is happening, and the temperature variations and rainfall variations, we were asked about farmers whether they have perceived any change in their climate. During last 20 years, we have asked what are the changes that you have experienced in your climate related to last 20 years. And in here we have listed what they have observed. As Dr. Shiomani explained, they also experience that changes in the rainfall pattern and temperature, changes in the temperature and occurrence of extreme events as well. But the majority experience that changes in the rainfall and the extreme events. Specifically in Kilinocchi and Patikopi, they have recently they have experienced high occurrence of droughts and floods, as well as the rainfall rainfall variabilities. Then this, I think this is the most important part, how households have adapted into these changes. In this, for the easiness of the understanding, I have divided this adjustment that they have made in their activities into two broad components, like what they have done for their farm and crop management practices, and then the water management practices. I think water is the main critical agriculture input in terms of climate change as well. So how they have adapted into these two broad components, specifically for the Yala and Maha season. In this one, it says how they have adapted to the Maha season. Maha season, in that chart explained in his presentation, Yala is the main rainy season of Sri Lanka. So what they have, most of them have done was shifting their cropping season based on the initiate their land preparation with onset of the rainfall. And adherence of other thing I have in here mentioned that is a 0.9 advanced crop establishment methods and following minimum tillage practices. Those of things are very limited in this area. When we go to the agriculture water management, these are the responses reported by the farmers. What I wanted to highlight here is those are very, very limited number of farmers have adapted to this improved water management practices in their field. Even though we are talking about we have to increase the water efficiency and all, at the field level, the farmers have not gone into that level of adaptation in the real situation. So this is related to Yala season, which is the water scarce season in Sri Lanka. But they have, most of them have done was go to short duration crop varieties. And then they have specifically 63% of the people have reported they have initiated and preparation onset of the rainfall, because Raga is one of the driest district in Sri Lanka. What they have done was they have adjusted their planting based on this rainfall. And those others, it's same. They have the number of adaptations that they have adapted are very limited when it comes to advanced crop technology. So technological know-how, we have to highlight that part. When it goes to the water management, it's same. What they have done was they have using a mulch or something like that. That is the strategy that they have mentioned most. In here, that you may have the question how we have selected these strategies. We have asked farmers different set of strategies that we have introduced and we are promoting. But those are the strategies that farmers have actually implemented in the field. So they may not be the most suitable thing. when it comes to the climate change adaptation. So for the easiness of understanding, I have put this into a graphical form in terms of total sample. It's this in both Maha, what they have done in Maha season and season, in terms of total sample, what they have done was changing their cropping season based on the rainfall, onset of the rainfall, and they have gone for the short duration crops and drought tolerant varieties, and crop diversification and following minimum tillage practices are also very low in the field level. This is same. Improved water management practices. I think Department of Agriculture promoting this alternative wetland drying with the rice cultivation. None of the farmers have adapted this kind of things in the field, and this also included the parachute and those kind of improved technologies. That the adaptation of farmers are very low in these four districts in terms of agricultural technologies. And growing cover crops, improved irrigation methods like sprinkler irrigation, micro drip irrigation, which is very low. So this is the reality in the field. So then we wanted to know how farmers have decide whether to adapt or not. We have done a regression analysis. We want to find out whether there is any statistical relationship between farmers' adaptation and the level of education, income, age, and all characteristics. So in this study, what we have done was some farmers have adapted more than 1 to adaptation strategies in the field with the comments from the guidance of the field level officers. We have ranked those adaptation strategies, and we allocated a weight for each strategy and prepare an index, and when we run the regression against that index. So what we have found was, interestingly, the regression results show that awareness of the climate change and receipt of climate information, early climate information, and participation of climate change adaptation programs within event-driven households and membership in societies show a positive relationship between the adaptation. So, in a simple term, if they have received the climate-related information in earliest possible, they have made some adjustment to their cultivation practices, and they have gone for some adaptation programs. And women-led households, they have shown the positive relationship. I think we can explain this like that. The women-led household, they have very limited opportunities to go beyond their location or household level, and they have to do best to in their agricultural activities to survive. So then there is a more tendency to adaptation strategies. And specifically, when we consider about the regional variation in adaptation, Kirunati shows the highest level of adaptation, and Monragal district shows the least level of adaptation. And Monragal, obviously, the education level and the I think poorest district in Sri Lanka is Monragal. So they have these resource limitations and all. That's why I think they have less adapted compared to other districts. As a conclusion, I would like to say, as I discussed earlier, farmers have made adaptation that requires low technological know-how and low investment capacities. So that is why I think they have gone for the shifting cultivation rather than going to investing drip irrigation or sprinkler irrigation. So it implies that there is a necessity to increase in investment in rural agriculture development related to agriculture actions to empower households to make location-specific strategies, long-term decisions for their future well-being. If we are talking about the resilience of the agricultural communities in the long term. So autonomous adaptation is not adequate in this situation. So support from the government, NGOs, and the private sector is crucial to shift these farmers from this autonomous adaptation to long-term strategies promoting resilience to asset accumulation, livelihood diversity. diversification and adapted to profitable agricultural technologies in the future. So with that, I would like to know what are the policy suggestions that we have derived from our study. First, we would like to say it is important to increase the capacity in the relevant stakeholders, invest in farm education and training. We have in our regression also shows that if the farmers have proper training and awareness on these things, they have higher tendency to adapt to climate change adaptation strategies. So it is important to introduce them with high technological know-how and skill training, resources to implement climate resilient practices, and educate farmers to make cultivation decisions based on early warning or weather forecast system. It is important and to make sure that farmers receive those early warning messages to plan their agricultural activities accordingly. And then financial support for adaptation, it is almost important because most of them have gone for low investment adaptation strategies because of their resource limitations and all. Therefore, in our research, we would like to recommend the necessity of increasing the financial support for these adaptation measures. These like subsidizing climate resilient technologies and providing low interest loans. And it is important to highlight that the farmers who are having this agricultural insurance are very low in our sample. So we recommend it is important to increase this weather-based insurance or like insurance schemes to mitigate risk associated with this upcoming climate hazards. And community-based adaptation, it is important and encourage and support community-driven adaptation initiatives, foster collaboration between government agencies, NGOs, and communities to develop these context-specific strategies that align with the needs of the priorities of the farmers. This should be the location-specific interventions. And enhancing women's economic participation, we have seen in Mr. Shankar's presentation that the higher number of women are in these study locations who are in these economic active populations are jobless. So, and even in the field and the informal discussions, the female farmers highlighted the need of the income job opportunities for them that they can do within their household or within their village. So in Honorable, Lenoche and those areas, those opportunities are very limited. So in this research highlighted the importance of creating those job opportunities for the women and for the youth who are leaving the school. For not adhering to the agriculture, they need other income diversification. And infrastructure development also important to increase the resilience in this climate change scenario. And policy integration across sectors are very important. We have to in our national agricultural policy and climate change adaptation policy, environment policy, and all these policies have included this climate change adaptation and importance of adaptation into their policy agendas. But we would like to highlight the necessity of this the collaboration between all these policies, and implementing inclusive and gender sensitive policies are also important for when we talk about the gender equity and enhancing women empowerment and building the resilience in this rural agrarian community, especially in terms of women. And monitoring and evaluation framework is all we should have strengthened. We all very aware that the government and the other stakeholders are implementing different climate adaptation strategies and programs in the field level. But it is important to get the progress and the monitoring of this. What is the progress of these programs in terms of climate change adaptation? To what extent these programs have been able to achieve the targeted objectives? So international cooperation, it is very important. Engage in international collaboration to share best practices, technologies, and financial resources. I think all of us are aware that there is a huge dialogues developing in the world in global arena on this climate change. We can harness this potential. So, in terms of climate adaptation, we would like to highlight the importance of this international cooperation as well. So, that is the main key policy points I think from this audience. We can improve this, and we highly encourage you to participate and give your expert knowledge to improve these our findings and the specifically policy recommendations. That is our a main objective of this program as well. We would like to improve this one with your expertise comments. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Munawar. Ladies and gentlemen, the report that has been produced following this research, which has been conducted for over 2 years, which I had the pleasure of reading, states, and I quote, Sri Lanka is highly vulnerable to climate change impacts due to high temperatures, unique and complex hydrological regimes, and exposure to extreme climate events. The agricultural sector, which plays a crucial role in the country's economy, contributing to 6.9% of the total GDP, is the most affected by climate-induced disasters, particularly due to its high sensitivity to climatic conditions, though not all its subsectors are equally vulnerable. Additionally, it serves as the primary source of livelihood for rural communities, which is 27% of the population employed in this sector, which I want to draw your attention to, which means the population under discussion here today covers more than a quarter of the population that is employed in this sector. Ms. Munawari's presentation in particular highlights the importance of dialogue because it identifies a gap between the research, the policy, and the actual implementation of said policy, especially in the long term, which is why it is important that we make sure that we move farmers from autonomous adaptation to skilled, informed, context-based, and gender-sensitive policy implementations, which is why we create dialogues such as the one we have here today. We move towards the panel discussion portion of this event. We will open the floor for 4 panelists for the discussion on climate-adapted farming practices and climate adaptation of vulnerable groups in the dry zone of Sri Lanka and the work that has been presented here today. Allow me to first introduce our panel moderator, Dr. Frederick Aberatna, consultant agricultural economist. Dr. Aberatna obtained his bachelor's in agriculture honors from the University of Ceylon in the year 1975. He obtained a postgraduate diploma in agricultural economics from the University of Reading in the UK in 1978, followed by a master's in agricultural economics from the University of Reading in 1979. He completed his PhD in economics at Virginia Tech University in the United States in 1988. He started his career as an assistant lecturer at the University of Pennsylvania in 1975 and then joined the Agrarian Research Institute, or RT, and rose to the position of Head Agricultural Resource Management Division and Deputy Director of the Institute, where he worked on areas such as environmental impacts of shifting farming, agriculture energy, farm mechanization, farming systems, rural institutions, farming systems of rural institutions, efficiency analysis, marketing, and public finance. Most of the work that he has done has been done in collaboration with international agencies and universities, such as the University of Cambridge and Reading, the International Food Policy Research Institute, and many other institutions. He then joined the UNDP in 1992, where he functioned as the head of the Poverty and Governance Unit, as a senior program analyst, worked in different areas such as governance, poverty, environment, rehabilitation, and reconstruction in conflict-affected areas, the private sector, and in IT. Since 2013, he has been working as a freelance consultant for several organizations, including the UNDP, the FAO, the World Bank, and the UN Habitat. He has also worked as a course tutor to the International Agricultural Center in the Netherlands and was a visiting lecturer at the University of Reading, UK, was a consultant agricultural economist and a board member at the Coconut Research Institute of Sri Lanka. He's also been visiting at the postgraduate institutions of the University of Peradeniya, the Postgraduate Institute of Management at the University of Jawaharlal and the Universities of Ruhuna and Colombo and Open University. He has been the editor of many scientific journals. He is also the past president of the Sri Lanka Agricultural Economics Association and has served in many committees, including the OPA, HARTI, CARP, PGIA at the PIM, and at the University Grants Commission. I would now like to hand over proceedings to Dr. Abhiratna. Quick announcements while Chris Abhiratna makes his way to the head table. Ladies and gentlemen, if you wish to pose a question to the panelists, please make sure that you raise your hand. There are the lovely ladies of World Vision and Hearty are available with FM microphones in the audience. Raise your hand and wait for the moderator to acknowledge you. And when you do pose your question, please mention your name, your designation, and your affiliated institute before asking your question. Over to you, Dr. Abhiratna.
Thank you very much for the introduction. May I invite the other panelists to the podium before we start? We have Dr. Lakshmi Meghaduvalda, Dr. A.P. Hussaina, Engineer Prabhat, and Ms. Madhavi Aryawan. Morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello.
Let me first of all thank Hearty and the Vision for calling for the dialogue on climate change and impacts, including a major part of the study where effects of changing climate on vulnerable communities in the rising of Sri Lanka has been studied. We also heard again 3 presentations based on the study findings and some policy recommendations. Recapitulate, it was noted most of the farming operations have gone through some adaptive measures than adopting new technologies on water management and other agricultural technologies. We also heard that only about a third has received any form of information and training on coping mechanisms, although a large number of people did know that there was something about climate change taking place. Also, it highlighted impacts such as reduced food consumption or consuming reduced nutrient value foods and increasing sickness levels, heavy dropouts from schools, and even gender disparities where women and children are mostly affected. So there obviously, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of scope for policy and program interventions to reduce, if not to eliminate, negative impacts of climate change. In fact, it is important to note, even at the highest level, the President himself has noted the importance of even having a tertiary level educational institutions on this subject. Okay, now we have 4 eminent professionals who will give their opinions on this matter. The forum will feature the presentations of findings and recommendations on climate adaptive farming practices and climate adoption, household food security, and the impacts of climate change on women and children. So those are the 3 areas that we will be focusing on. I would humbly request the panelists to focus on highlighting further research needs and existing data information gaps within these subject areas. Starting with that. Then additionally, panel members are encouraged to discuss gaps and shortcomings in existing policies and programs, including policy gaps, overlapping issues, and the need for further policy adjustments. Where we do know there are a lot of policies around and programs around as well, but not much is finally is happening as an outcome. So I would humbly request them to focus their attention mostly on to tell us where the policy gaps, where the research gaps are, so that we can have successful programs in the future. So there are four analysts. The first presenter will be Dr. L.P. Rupasena, who is a senior lecturer at the Department of Agribusiness, Agricultural Systems, and the Faculty of Agriculture at the Rajaratnam University of Sri Lanka. Now, Dr. Rupasena he started his professional career as an assistant lecturer at the University of Pennsylvania back in 1979, and later joined Hector for Agriculture Research and Training Institute in 1980, and he had different positions there, starting as a research officer, and then research fellow, and finally as the additional director of the institute before joining the University of Rajaratnam as senior lecturer. The group has represented high-level committees such as Presidential Task Force on Food Security, Cabinet Subcommittee on Cost of Living, and Cabinet Subcommittee on Food Marketing. So these are marketing specialists, and you hope that we will give some recommendations where policy directives are needed, because marketing is an important issue if you are going to have some new techniques to mitigate climate change and so on. So Dr. Rupasena he will speak on the direct consequences of the effects of climate change on the agricultural marketing and in the marketing system, and give some recommendations how we can meet these challenges.
Good morning to everybody. At the outset, thank you very much for the organizers for giving this opportunity, and also thank you to Dr. Abhiratnam for introducing me. So, within 10 minutes time given to me, I will talk about effect of climate change on agricultural food marketing and mitigation strategies. So, my presentation basically covered two parts. One is what is the effect of climate change on agriculture, and second, I will discuss about the most important part, the strategies for mitigation effect. Let's see effect of climate change on food marketing, because we know that we have studied a lot of things on production side, and also maybe nutrition, and also food security. But marketing aspect is not adequately addressed in the literature. So when you think about the marketing, I must say that marketing is a major driver in level of production as well as food security. If we talk about the food security, we have four pillars. One is the food availability, then we have food accessibility, we have food utilization, and food stability. Those four areas directly linked with the marketing. If we have a good marketing system, we have a good production system. They are two sides of the same coin. But we always talking about the production side, but we neglect the marketing part. But marketing is the major driver. If you talk about the food utilization, then food stability, as well as food consumption, like that, all depend on the marketing. If you have a good value chain or good marketing system, we can assure good stability and good utilization and also good availability. So think about that. Marketing is the most important part. After that, I would like to talk about what is the impact of climate change on marketing. We all know that major impact is prices. We all know that recent past vegetable prices increase so much. Even maybe 1 year back, rice prices increased so much. So we have experienced climate change impact on food prices. So we are talking about food inflation. Rising food prices directly linked with food inflation. Then another part is we call food, what we call we call that volatility. That means change of food prices over the years. That also very significant impact we have. So in the short run, what we have observed is the food inflation is very high. In Sri Lanka, usually last year, we have observed that I think food inflation contributed to more than 70% of the total inflation. Okay, next slide. When we talk about the impact of climate change on agricultural marketing, we can think about it affect both production market and also input market, or output market or input market, both. When we think about the input market, major thing is shortage of the seed. Seed shortage. People are talking about the seed insecurity. That means seed not available at the time. Farmers need maybe in terms of quality wise also. For example, if you have a drought or food shortage in the paddy, we have a serious concern about the paddy seed as well as quality. Because if we produce the seed from the local production, we have a problem with the climate change. That is the major thing. Then we have to think about the output market. Output market we can divide it into two. One is the we can producer market. Other one we can talk about the consumer market. In the producer market, what we observe is increasing food prices. Even in the consumer market, also increasing food prices we observe. Then when about the increase in food prices, that is good for the producer because we know that in the food prices increase, we have heard about the most out from the consumer side, but not in the producer side. What the reason? In principle, usually in agricultural commodity, food prices are increasing at a higher rate than the production decline. So that is why if you see about the nowadays in the green chili prices in some areas in Anuradhapur area, farmers are getting more than 300,000 per one trip because of prices have over 100,000 rupees per kilo. Because that is common for agricultural commodities, food prices are increasing at a higher rate than the production decline. That means farmers are getting benefit from the climate change. That's the positive side. But problem is they are not getting full benefit because of the value chain or supply chain is governed by the middleman. So middleman is getting more benefit than the farmer. Then most important part, we already interacted about the mitigation strategies. So what should be the solution for that? Number one is we should have a maintaining of buffer stock. Or that is for only the storable commodities like rice, maybe potatoes also. Then when you have a buffer stock, if we have a shock like climate change, we can release that stock to stabilize the market prices. We know that climate change impact basically on market supply. Demand is usually stable for agricultural commodities in the short run. Problem is the supply side problem. So what we have to do is we have to increase the supply. One way is the maintaining buffer stock. Then second one is the usually food imports. Usually in Sri Lanka, basically we are depending on food import. But most of the other countries they depend on the buffer stock program. In case of buffer stock program, most of the countries buffer is maintained by the government agency. Even though it has cost to the treasury, but we have to think about the social benefit rather than the cost. Most of the countries maintaining buffer stock by the government. But there are some innovative strategies, just like Thailand. What they do is they ask the millers to purchase the paddy at the guaranteed price, and government monitor their stock. So in the past we had that type of system I think 1990s, rice importers maintain buffer and the food department monitor that system, but after liberalization of the rice import, that system was collapsed. So still I believe that we should have a buffer stock program in order to stabilize the prices, either private sector or uh, in the government sector. I think if you can, some millers can do the paddy stock or rice stock under the supervision and under the support of the government. Maybe they can issue some kind of credit subsidy. Then food imports, we are doing in Sri Lanka mostly dependent on the food import. What the Sri Lanka is thinking was in the past, within 2 months, within 2 weeks, we can import rice or other things from India. That is, we had an idea. But remember now, it is we have an uncertainty. Even recent past, we can ban India, and there is depend on the import, we have a problem. Even in the Swaminathan is the popular person in India, he is saying we don't need to depend on import because we are depend on import means we are wasting our scarce resources of foreign exchange as well as he is saying we are importing unemployment also. If we develop the local production, we can increase employment also. So we do not need to too much dependent to import. We know that if the problem arises, what we do is we are cleaning up the efficient millers or efficient traders by importing and releasing this import stock at the cheaper price. For example, you know that when the sudden price increase of the eggs, our only solution is importing the eggs. That is not the solution. We are killing the efficient people and protecting the others. Then third one is the shifting demands. Because one way is we have to increase the market supply, other thing is we have to control in the demand, shifting demand. So naturally, when the prices are increasing, demand decreasing in economic theory. To some extent we can decrease, but it depends on the commodity. If the commodity is essential, if we don't have substitute, definitely we cannot control or we cannot shift in the demand to some extent. But we can do something like carrot. We don't need to too much worry about that. If the prices are going up, consumer can substitute. In other countries, usually market decide the things and consumer change. Consumer behavior, we have to think about that. Consumer will take care of that. Then next one is fourth one. I thinking about that direct marketing or e-marketing concept. Because we all know that I mentioned that during the period when we have when prices are high as a result of shortage of production due to climate change, traders are getting benefit. What we have to do is we have to promote direct marketing. That means producer directly sell to the consumer. We know that in some cases, Anuradhapura product or what you call that. For tomato also, cucumber goes to Dambulla. From Dambulla, they come to the Anuradhapura. But there are some countries, especially in you know that in African countries, they have a virtual farm market. Under virtual farm market, what they do is they get orders from the consumers in the relevant areas, and either consumer can come and collect the thing from the virtual market, or sometimes virtual market people they distribute the thing to the consumer. That type of thing is operating success stories. That is one of the e-marketing we can promote. It is to some extent we are having. Some farmers have some kind of app. Through the app, they are distributing product to the consumer. We have to promote that one. The next one. Then earlier I mentioned short-term thing. Then medium term, what we can do is we observe that due to high risk, that agricultural investment has come down. Because of that, production is not increasing as we expected. Earlier presentation, we observed that climate change is advancing, temperature is decreasing, and also temperature is increasing, and rainfall is decreasing. That type of thing happening. So we have to promote agriculture in order to reduce the adverse impact. what we have to do is, what I want to suggest is, first one is to increase the investment. We have to follow the acquisition cluster approach because most of my strategy is based on the success stories in other countries. So other countries basically they have a cluster approach. That cluster approach means everybody get together and work uh, common purpose. Then next one is networking economic centers. For example, India has a regulated market more than 185. They have network electronically. They call ENAM, Electronic National Electricity Market System. They call One India, One Market concept. So auction is going on. Then things are working a very successful story. We can reduce the green and the emission also. We can reduce the harmful of the now more than 65% of the things go through the three-wheelers. We can reduce that one. India is using some system. Uh, we can follow that one because the time constraint I am not explaining too much. Then next one is the market information system. Earlier mentioned that if we have early warning system, we can improve the system. We have to do that type of thing. RT can improve those things. In case of policy, I found that we have a very good policy document, 2016 to 2025. I think more than 170 pages that include everything, include vision, mission, and activities. Even we have a KPI, key performance indicators are also available. Then what is left is we have to celebrate the outcome. Then one is maybe last one, institutional mechanism. What we have a system, we have a regional level, we have a monthly regional meeting, then district level we have a district meeting. Even national level in the past we had a national food policy committee, but it was now no one was operating. In the past weekly we monitor the food supply situation in the country, that was no longer operating. My suggestion is we need strong mechanism to address the food marketing issues, then implement the suggestion, and finally monitor and remove the situation. So I think we don't need too much policy. The only thing is who is going to implement the thing. Implement and pass is the most important. Thank you very much.
Although we say that we have free market mechanism in this country, we all know, especially the agriculture market is not free. It is heavily managed or monopolized by few traders and so on. We all hear about that. Now, Dr. Rupasena gave some ideas about how we can get about. He did say that the policy is there, but what is not there is the outcome-based programs and monitoring and evaluation. So this is something to think about, how we can have outcome-based programs and plans, not just having the policy saying that the free market will look after our problems and so on. Ladies and gentlemen, we will open it for the audience for questions and answers after all the four speakers speak. But if there's one burning question at this time, I will take it. Especially on the recommendations made by Dr. Rupasena later. Any one burning question? Okay, think about it. We'll have a discussion a little later. Our next speaker is. I'm sorry, there's one question. Yes, please.
Actually, that I want to raise that question because I also involved for a long time now, 24 years in agriculture. So there are a lot of projects implemented in order to achieve the food security. But I don't know that policy also there. I remember that one is finance relief project that all farmers product is taken and there are three places. There are warehouses established using that government funds. That is actually not government fund, that's funded by the World Bank. So that also there. That I'm also engaged in that project. And one project actually that to make the buffer stock, as Dr. Rupasena pointed out. So that buffer stock one also we have some that is actually implemented the right food department as well. So that is in reality. But all is collapsed. At the moment it's not run. but policy also there. But implementation policy is the most important thing as my understanding. That is I want to point it out. Thank you.
Yeah, I studied that, that's called, DIALOG basic finance system. And also under that system, we can store 40,000 metric ton of grains. And at present, even we don't have a 500 metric ton. Even less than 300 farmers are using that DIALOG basic system. So basic thing is, even that is a loan, we got a European Union. So where the thing is, lack of interest of the people. We have usually there are three system. There are four partners. One is the what is called the warehouse operator. Then we have at the beginning farmer. We have a operator. Then we have a bank. Then we have a regulator body government. Those four are not incorporated. You know, in our Sri Lankan culture, we don't have a cooperation and coordination. Until that we cannot achieve. I will say that there is a statement called what you call that, people make things happen, other resources make things possible. Most important thing, make things happen. That is our duty. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hussain, for that. Our second speaker is Dr. Lakshmi Naina, Margaret, right? Okay. She will primarily speak on food security and nutrition with special emphasis on women and children in climate affected communities. Just to say a little about Dr. Margaret. She's a consultant community physician attached to the Ministry of Health, now serving as the acting director at Nutrition Division at the Ministry of Health. She is with 2 postgraduate degrees in public health, the master's degree, a doctorate, MD in community medicine, and a postgraduate certificate in medical education conferred by the University of Colombo. She has served nearly 26 years so far in the government service and have years of experience in planning, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation in all the areas of public health, which we did have too much in that marketing sector. Dr. Margaret.
Introduction. So my task here, good afternoon, I think it's past 12 noon. Good afternoon. So let me go for the first thing. I was asked to give some introduction regarding climate induced production loss and the impact on household and nutrition security. So why shall we go through the some graphs, because you can see this is our current scenario in wasting. That is SAM and MAM. SAM means severe acute malnutrition and MAM means moderate acute malnutrition. So you can see between 2022 and 2023 what we are facing right now. So in you can see most of the medical office of health areas in the country are affected by the food inflation, climate change. Everything is being impacted on these nutrition states. Next one. So you can see this is, I just want to highlight, there's a great district disparity. Even though the current one is 21, it was 10.1% in 2022, it was 23, it is 10%, but you can see there's a great disparity among districts. So the climate change impacted dry zone, wet zone, everything. So if we want to actually improve nutrition status of children, we have to targeted intervention tailor-made for each district should be done. So here the stunting. This is a little bit of a bad scenario because stunting means that the children are chronically malnourished, more than 6 months. So you can see between 22 to 23 how it was worsening. Almost all districts are now increased rates of stunting, and we have to attend very urgently to improve the status. So this is, you can see, I think the corner one must be Noor area, highest stunting. And Colombo CLC area, I'm very sad to say, is the highest one. So this is the scenario right now we are facing. We have undernutrition, we have overnutrition, we have micronutrient deficiency, or triple burden of malnutrition we are facing right now in the country, we have to attend it without further delay. So when we say underweight you can see such a scenario. Highest rate you can see Anuradhapura, Coronado, rural area. Underweight means acute malnutrition. So the children at this moment, there are a lot of children, around 15,700 children who are severely acute malnourished. So it's disseminated among districts. So there is a need to attend. That's why I want to highlight over and over again. This is something regarding anemia because we have to attend micronutrient deficiencies. This is zinc deficiency. That's another micronutrient deficiency that we are facing. So you can see the highest and also regarding we Ministry of Health have school medical inspection for grade 1, 4, 7, 10. We annually measure weight height, and so you can see there's wasting across all district, and also in spite of wasting we have overweight as well. So there's overweight, obesity, also there. Highest, I'm afraid, Colombo CMC area is the highest overweight and obesity because of the junk food and unhealthy food consumption. This is pregnant mother, so you can see the district variation here as well, and anemia. This is when the period of pregnancy, that is actually around 12 weeks of pregnancy, that definitely highlight the general population women. So our general population women, they suffer from anemia, and there is a great disparity among districts. If you really want to get these details, Family Health Bureau, Ministry of Health, in their website you can get this report 2023 and National Nutrition Month Summary Report. It's available. So you can see, according to WFP, FAO result, they have done assessment. Almost 17% are moderate acute food insecure, and about 10,000 are severely acute. And in spite of that, women, I'm so sad to say, women fought more than 40% of women in 18 to 60 years are overweight or obese. And there's poor dietary diversity because at this moment we witness it, the lack of access to nutritious food because daily intake of fruits, vegetables and the dairy portions are minimal. I have to highlight because I imply from the agriculture sector is represented today. Please do something to improve traditional fruits and vegetable farming. You have to go for commercial crops, that's I understand, but traditional fruits and vegetables, when we were very small age that we have consumed, we tasted those fruits and vegetables are no more. So we need that. So the daily intake is far below the national recommendation. We recommend 400 grams per day fruits and vegetables, but we just consume around 230. I think it's lesser than that because of the cost of fruits and vegetables. And dietary diversification is definitely negatively correlated with food prices. So if you do a dietary assessment right now, we recommend 6 food groups, but actually we may getting only 2 or 3 food groups per day. So that's a very bad situation. So when we go for this next one, that is the climate change on nutrition and education. UNICEF has done a study in 2021 and they have published, I taken from this, their evidence. They have told because of acid and landslide, school infrastructure was damaged and lack of clean water, especially in dry zone and hilly areas. And dropping out of schools in the eastern province, it was highest. Girls from the lower they were absent to school because they had to fetch water. The girls were, that is, there is definitely gender bias there. And we have to highlight not only major disasters. Major disasters are highlighted in news clips and everything, but small scale recurrent hazards play a big role in education. And because those are the challenging student access to schools and during the last year, I think Central Province faced life-threatening landslides and vector-borne diseases. Dengue, if you consider, dengue is one big epidemic. That is a water-based vector-borne disease. Water-borne diseases such as diarrhea as well as skin diseases. And definitely rural farming communities, small-scale rural farmers. They are the ones who have been affected this hardship. And because in medicine we talk about total well-being, not only physical well-being, mental well-being, social well-being, emotional well-being, that is the WHO definition. So emotional well-being also affected in children. Disasters play a heavy emotional toll. And also because our education system, I'm so sad to say, we are exam oriented only. So most of the time the children are in a closed room, so they get irritable when staying in a hot and uncomfortable room. We are fighting for reform. I do hope that we will get a reform with a more action-oriented education syllabus. The next one would be the information gaps in the rural food and nutrition security and present information gaps. In that UNICEF study, they have highlighted we need to gather and share and analyze climate change impact data, which is concerning school children, and we need to change school policies, plans, and strategies according to that. And we have to have comprehensive and system-wide climate smart school concept framework for Sri Lanka, and actually to implement those guidelines. We do have a lot of policies are coming whenever there's a government change, there will be reforms, but they are not implemented. So we have to have a definite policy, and it should be implemented and monitored. And also regarding the food gap, because dietary intake of key micronutrients, definitely because now we are a little bit worried about the protein. I think during the course of the day we have highlighted the protein insufficiency. So because of the high pricing cost of fish, eggs, milk, I think. So we have to think about livestock as well, other than commercial crops. So to have a food gap, there is a definitely food gap is there. So we need more information on that. And also identify nutrient-rich crops, because whenever there's a home gardening program during COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of people are engaged in home gardening. And Ministry of Health, actually we have to have the home gardening guide. We had an emergency nutrition action plan 2024, and in that one proposal was on home gardening. And whenever we do some home gardening project, only those chili and some butter and all those very not very nutritionally rich ones. So we need to identify nutrient-rich crops for school. And also World Food Program is having school home gardening program, that is we are supplying school meal program for 1.1 million children in Sri Lanka. So we need to implement the suppliers to have some home gardening in their own premises, backyard poultry, so they can supply a very good nutritious food. And also regarding climate smart agricultural approach, I think Ministry of Agriculture and Ministry of Health and all those ministries should work together. And let's go for the next one. This is policy intervention. I'm very happy to say, being part of National Nutrition Policy 21-2030, we were able to, with all the multi-sectoral partnership, we were able to launch, and we are implementing at this moment. And I'm enforcing in every opportunity when I get to be a part of implementation of the nutrition-friendly National Nutrition Policy. And we were able to present it to the Presidential Secretariat and got their endorsement. And according to the policy priority area, there are 6 policy priority areas identified. We are now developed multi-sectoral action plan for nutrition for 2024-2030, which is now almost finished, which will be launched during the first quarter this year. And we are going to prepare, because whenever we have a national plan, we need to have district plans, and they want ownership. So we are, with UNICEF support, Ministry of Health is now going to implement, plan at least 7 districts we have identified highest rates of underweight and stunting. So during the first quarter, we will have 7 district plans, and we are hoping to finish all districts by end of 2024. And I want to ask to advocate to think multi-sectorally, because we are very used to working silos in Sri Lanka. If we want to actually work towards the general population, we have to have shared vision. So I do hope this discussion will lead to that. So we have to do work harmonizing, and also I am sad to say tracking is not very good in Sri Lanka. So we need a tracking for food production. Even when we consider egg production, you have experience in the past few months about their food tracking regarding food production, prices, and early warning signs of drought and famine. And also the policies and the programs may have to change. So we have to assess periodically, and presidential secretariat is there now. We have National Nutrition Council, multi-sector platform is there. So I do hope if there's a scaling of nutrition focal point established. So Ministry of Health is actually the stewardship for this. I'm proud to say. So we do hope that we can assess even our national nutrition policy, because it was in the design before this economic downfall. So we may have to revisit it again. So, and also regarding education provision and learning quality, we may have to, because education and nutrition, education and health go together. So we need to address the gap. So those are the gaps I find. And regarding women empowerment, Sri Lanka, I think regarding the population, the highest proportion is women. But our women are not actually empowered enough to, as the study revealed, we are not empowered. Only few at the top positions, there are women definitely, but even the parliament is it's not represented, and at rural community, the women do not have power to decide in decision making. So thank you, that's all.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Madhumata, for that. One thing I take home from Dr. Rupa said yesterday, Dr. Anuradha's speeches were that the poor monitoring, evaluation, and tracking of our programs in this country. We have big policies, big programs, a lot of money being used, but hardly the outcomes are monitored and tracked and evaluated. So this is something that we have to really think about. Any burning question before we go to the third speaker? One question at least. Yes, please.
We appreciate the name and the designation of the person who are asking the question.
Yeah, my name is Saman Silvira. I'm a professor of climate change biology from University of Rhoda. Especially Lakmini is a very burning issue. This is not only for Sri Lanka, this is a global issue now. The micronutrition and the global malnutrition. The point that started this problem is the plant breeding. The most of the cereal crops, we started breeding for yield, for carbohydrates, but we miss the quality aspects. Now the Western world has started to correcting it, but we have not made any attempt to correct it yet here. Agriculture department had to take a major role in this regard. Then, as well as all the other institutions, we need to, universities and other organizations need to work together. And when it comes to the climate change, actually climate change has a huge impact on the quality. It decreases protein, decreases micronutrients, decreases zinc and iron. It's a very lot of nutrients for the whole human metabolic activities, and they have been heavily depleted. This is a kind of double whammy effect. And so if we do not address this issue immediately, we are into great trouble, because Western countries are addressing and working hard to tackle this issue. So we have recently published paper in Nature. We put all the global data. We have the biggest impact in this part of the world. So I think you
taking message across the society is a very nice way. I think we all need to take this thing to the real people, whatever the parties involved, and I think we need to address this in the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for that intervention.
Yeah, multi-sectoral approach is the best one. We have to work together and there should be tracking. That is a must.
Right. We are into the third speaker now. Our third speaker is Ms. Madhavi Malaguda Aribandu. She will focus on the gender aspect of climate change, impacts on the vulnerable farming communities in the dry zone, and so on. Let me say a few words about Ms. Aribandu. She is a senior expert on disaster and climate risk management, gender and social inclusion. She started her career at the Agrarian Research and Training Institute, Sri Lanka, conducting research and training on agriculture development for over 10 years. She led the Disaster Risk Management Program at Intermediate Technology Development Center, that is ITDG, South Asia. She also served as the National Gender Advisor and project leader of the Micro Enterprise Recovery in the Tsunami Recovery Program of the United Nations Development Program in Sri Lanka, that's UNDP. So she was also formerly the head of office of the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction in the Central Asia and South Caucasus region. And she was the head of office at the interim UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction in Asia Pacific region.
Thank you, Fred, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. So the topic I'm going to speak about, I think the study, this whole discussion is focusing on, very strongly highlighted the gender-based issues and particularly the gaps in all four districts. And the previous speaker who spoke about the nutrition issues prevalent in the country also mentioned the gaps based on on gender issues. So what I thought of doing is, first I will give you a very quick snapshot of the status of women in the country, and then take a look at the engagement of women in the agriculture sector. What are the most glaring disparities that we see in the agriculture sector, and what are the measures that are being taken now, and what we can do to do better to improve the situation. So if we look at the current snapshot of the status of women, first of all, I think we are all aware that Sri Lanka has been highlighted in the South Asia region for several decades now, with very good social indicators which highlight the attainments in education and health, specifically highlighting the status of women, like indicators such as adult literacy. Over 90% of women in the country are literate. Secondary and tertiary education, maternal mortality, which is comparatively at a low level, 36 per 10,000 live births, as per the records of 2016. And low adolescent birth rates. Average life expectancy is 77 years for women and 70 in comparison to 70 years for men. Of course, with some district-based disparities. So these indicators are very good, and this, I would say, has been our comfort zone, always to say that women in Sri Lanka are doing quite well in comparison to particularly our neighbors in the region. But when you take a bit deeper look at other areas and other indicators, while we rank high in education, attainment and health, there are persistent inequalities in economic participation, opportunity and political empowerment. So These inequalities arise due to gender gaps in labor force participation ratio, wage equality inequality in similar work, income levels, women in leadership positions, as also the doctor clearly mentioned, our representation in parliament, women in ministerial positions. In fact, if we look at the leadership position and the decision-making representation level, political and public decision-making bodies, at present, it is only 5.3 representation at the parliament, for all developing countries, less than 20% when we compare with all developing countries. So then when it comes to skills, employment and economic participation, we have when we look at the world statistics, 14th largest gender gap in labor force participation, despite the achievements in education. If you look at the labor force participation rate for women, it's 35%, and that is half that of women, which is 75%. And the sad part is, for the last 3 decades, this has remained the same, which means that nothing much has changed for the last 30 years in terms for improving the economic participation of women. And another point of highlight is women are underpaid relative to men for similar work. And this figures over the time indicate that high unemployment rates and underpaid nature of the work, that the skills of women are underused. Although we have in terms of education, we are in a good position. So underpaid family labor is another critical area when it comes to women. There are vast gender-based disparities. Unpaid family workers represent over 16% of the total employed female population in the country. And for the purpose of comparison, for men, this is 2.5%. So women are also, when it comes to economic engagement, mostly in the informal sector with little social security and other benefits. Mostly informal sector workers, particularly high in the agriculture sector. So they are either employed as skilled or semi-skilled workers. And the kind of occupations tend to continue to be very stereotypical kind of work, which are assigned to women in on a persistent basis. So while men are perceived to be producers, women continue to be perceived as helpers, irrespective of the sector, and this is particularly in the agriculture sector. Only a minority of women have entered, have been able to break this cultural barrier. So among the women who are employed, even in the informal employment, over 75% are family workers, which means a household member engaged in a family business or farming, supporting or helping the other family members who are taking lead in this activity. So there is a huge challenge also in the absence of quantification of women's contribution. Because of the informal nature and because women are perpetually considered as in a supporting role, often the statistical quantification miss their contribution, properly accounting what their contribution is. But let's also not forget the multiple responsibilities that the group of women that we are talking about here, particularly in the agriculture sector, they have the household maintenance responsibility, food preparation, and fulfilling the water requirements of the family. And with the impact of climate change, access to the local sources of food, forest products, access to water, all these become additional pressures because they are all negatively, availability of those things are negatively impacted by the climate change. So that is the overall picture, snapshot about the status of women. And now I like to draw your attention to specifically about the women in the agriculture sector. Now, no, the previous slide, please. Yeah, now women in the agriculture sector, I hope you can see the figures. So about 29% of the total women employed in the country work in the agriculture sector. So that's about 1/3. And they happen to be the larger part of the agriculture labor force, both as paid as well as unpaid family workers. And another important part of statistics is that it has been estimated that more than 25%, meaning quarter of the households in the country, are headed by women. When we take the entire country, but in some districts this figure is higher. So this is on average, 1/4 of all the households in the country are headed by women. So I already mentioned that that when it comes to unpaid family workers, the larger percentage of women workers are unpaid family workers in the agriculture sector, and they are paid less for the similar work. And this figure is over 60%. And about the female-headed households, more number of female-headed households are in the rural areas engaged in the agriculture sector. So that's the picture about the agriculture sector. Next slide, please. Yeah. So here are some of the vital considerations when it comes to production-related disparities and barriers in the agriculture sector for women. When it comes to access and control over production resources critical for agricultural production and agriculture-based livelihoods like land, water, other inputs like fertilizer, women are far behind. If you, the 2019 study on the agriculture status of women in the agriculture production in the country by the Food and Agriculture Organization in Sri Lanka is stated that only 16% of the land ownership in the entire country, private land, is owned by women. 16%. So we already heard that over 30% of women are engaged in agriculture production. So if you don't have the land, which means accessing water to the farm organization, accessing other inputs like fertilizer, that becomes extremely challenging. And try to compare that with the situation where 25% of the households are women headed. So if they have to manage the agriculture-based livelihoods without the land title, that becomes independently managing that livelihood becomes extremely challenging. And access to skill training, because women are viewed as supporters. They are not the first priority when it comes to skill training programs. And secondly, because they also have other responsibilities, household responsibilities, food and water care responsibilities, women themselves find it difficult to, if a program is in a distant place or if it's a residential program, it's challenging for them to be away from the home or from the village. So which means there has to be additional arrangements which needs to be done. So here we have to put several parameters together, but it's a question whether we walk that extra miles to put that parameters together. It's easier to conduct a program with whoever is available, whoever is willing to come. So when you take that situation, you overlook that women are engaged in agriculture and their skills need to be also brought up to the level. So their accessibility to skill training, therefore, is less. Similar to access to markets. In the value chain, if you do a proper analysis, the Food and Agriculture Organization has done that analysis. If you look at the agriculture value chain, women are at the lowest steps of the value chain. When it comes to the high value crops, the marketing aspects, the communication, the networking, the negotiation, they are handled by the men who are engaged in the agriculture activities. I mentioned only 16% of the land ownership is held by women, and how it interferes with accessing subsidies, credit schemes, loans, because land becomes the collateral for accessing various other benefits related to production. And coming to the division of labor, women work predominantly in the early stages. So whether it is their experience, their skills, the related pay level as supporting workers. They are hardly considered as the primary person who is handling the production. So lower wage rates, it is estimated that women are paid 30% or less for the similar work in the agriculture sector. And their representation. Farm organizations are usually dominated by the men farmers. And the farm organizations give you the access to resources, information, connectivity, and the presence of the women there is not very significant. So these are the production-related disparities and barriers. That's all. Thank you. When I would also like to share a few notes, two more minutes. Yeah. So talking about the gaps, I think the main gap, as far as I can see, is in the attitude and approach, how we address the issues of women in this country. Now, the gender issues, barriers and constraints women face in economic and social engagements, they have been well researched in the country, well documented. These needs are acknowledged, and I think this is shown clearly in the stagnating labor force participation, stereotyping women's activities in skill development, assigning women support roles in value chains, and lower pay rates, which are consistent. And while there is space for improving and upgrading policy and planning provisions, the existing provisions are not pursued or utilized. So this I see as a considerable gap. And we have made national commitments through policies, international commitments for gender equality, climate action, sustainable development goals, then convention for gender equality for this CEDAW convention, but there's no consistent follow through despite these commitments. And if you look at most recent national level plans, sectoral development plans, they barely incorporate measures to address barriers for women's economic empowerment. And when it comes to data, sex and age disaggregated data is a luxury. It's not consistent or adequate, and there is little analysis. And because of that, women's contribution is invisible within the sectors, the management institutions, and it excludes them from integration into planning, support, skills, development assistance, and resulting in underutilization and loss of productivity. So, and then gaps in opportunities for training, loss of core benefits. Now, once you recognize women's value and contribution to a sector, to agriculture sector, if you enable their contribution with better skill development, training opportunity, credit and other facilities, it is also a contribution to social equity, social security, women's empowerment, and their productive role and poverty reduction. And I endorse the two previous speakers. We don't follow up, monitor, no indicators, no follow up, no accountability. So I stop by mentioning two very critical entry points to address these if we have the commitment. The nationally determined contributions for the climate commitments were agreed in 2021 in Sri Lanka, 14 sectors plus disaster loss and damage, and this includes agriculture sector. And there are agriculture sector adaptation commitments, clear set of activities. Unfortunately, gender has not been mentioned very clearly, so it remains to be incorporated. It's up to the implementers to address the gender aspects. These national determined contributions in the agriculture sector include climate smart agriculture practices, good agriculture practices, agriculture processing and preservation techniques and the livestock improvement practices where women are already strongly involved. So to what extent the implementation of these activities will take proactive steps to get women more engaged in a proactive manner with their skills and other support is up to the implementers. The second positive element entry point is the recently cabinet approved revised national climate change policy of 2023 that provide policy provisions for gender consideration and it addresses the disproportionate impact of climate change on women and children, and it calls for strengthening and utilizing women's capacities and role in climate adaptation. Professor Marade is here. He can further add to the climate policy and the climate smart agriculture practices, who was very much part of these activities. So I stop with this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madhavi, for showing us that the macro indicators on education and so on does not actually show the disparities that are found. My burning question is, given the social structure in this country, at the ground level and household level, what are the things that one can do to empower women so that their contribution will be much more valued on the one hand, as well as it will increase? Because the important thing is not about, for me, it's not about gender equality. What is foregone? The opportunity cost in a way, by not considering their contribution to the economy. So what can we do at the ground level to empower women for their contributions to be better and be accepted by the whole country? Is there an answer to that?
I can try to answer that. Actually, you need to now, I mentioned these two entry points. If you take the national determined contributions, they are expected to be in 14 sectors, including in the agriculture sector, implemented national commission through respective sectors. So if they are integrated, if those activities are integrated into the district level planning sectoral plans, which means the women who are working in the agriculture sector or the livelihood and fishery activities, certainly the provisions for climate smart agriculture, utilizing renewable energy sources to improve the production, better farming practices, the heat resistant using heat resistant crop and livestock varieties. So how do we engage women to get that knowledge? How do we support? We can support women to access the training, credit, and other support which are given to which are as part of those programs are given to the agricultural producers. But if we want women to access those skills, knowledge, and facilities, we have to proactively, first of all, acknowledge that there are women producers very much who are part of the production process. So unfortunately, up to now, it has been largely invisible or taken for granted, not in statistics, or we often give excuses that women are bound to household work, they are not available, they are not forthcoming. But those barriers you have to cross. I agree from women's side also, because of their other responsibilities, it's not easy for them to, it's less, their barriers are greater than for a male farmer, let's say. But the system also has to support them to cross those barriers, because it's for the common good. It's for the overall productivity gains, overall economic. If you economically enhance women producers, that means it's overall productivity and overall poverty reduction. It is possible, but you need to take extra steps to do that. And I think the policies have, particularly the climate change policy, provides that provision to do that.
Thank you. Can I take one burning question from the audience? Is Ms. Margaret?
Thank you very much. Since I was put in the spotlight, I thought I should intervene at this stage. I'm Buddhi Marangi. I'm a professor at the Faculty of Agriculture at the University of Lanka. This is not a question, but a comment to let you know that the National Policy on Climate Change, as Madhavi said, also has a strategic action plan this time. So it's a policy and a strategic action plan which clearly indicates how the gender incorporation or gender considerations would come. That's one important thing. Second, there are more openings right now. There will be very soon a national level workshop on technology need assessment for agriculture, especially with respect to climate change, which will be held towards the end of this month. And health sector, specifically, there's another workshop that will be organized by the FAO and Government of Sri Lanka, especially Ministry of Environment, early next month. I think those are the opportunities that are available right now for us to make sure if something has gone missing in the past, get them on board. So active participation will be most welcome. So let me stop at that point, Chancellor. Thank you.
Thank you, President. Okay, we have come to the fourth speaker. Is Engineer Prabhat Litharana, who will address the impact of climate change and climate variation on the rise of agriculture, climate adaptive farming practices, and climate adaptation under the mining-related and rain-fed conditions. Let me say a few words about him. He is the former Chief Engineer and Head of the Water Management Division of the Department of Agrarian Development, Agrarian Services Development. He is the authority for watershed album of Sri Lanka and hydrological soil group map of Sri Lanka. Engineer Litharana.
Good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Chairman and the distinguished gathering. I would like to highlight a few points from the water resource management perspective, and also raise a few questions to refresh your mindset. Now, this particular study, one of the keywords used is climate. What is climate? Climate is simply defined as the long-term average of weather. What is weather? Weather is a natural phenomenon taking place at the lower atmosphere of Earth. Now, our main concern is the climate-induced effects on both human systems as well as natural systems. What is human systems? Maybe the society or the community. What is natural systems? That is basically ecosystem. It has three major folds. First one is the natural cycle. You know, we simply say first winter monsoon, southwest monsoon, second winter monsoon, northeast monsoon. So we can easily predict those rhythms. Those are natural cycles, almost permanent. The second thing is the climatic variability, spatial variability, temporal variability. Simply it is temporary. It simply disappears. It won't happen again and again. And on top of that, there is another phenomenon called very crucial one called climate change. For a given period, nothing is permanent in the world, we know, but for a given period of time, climate change is permanent. It won't disappear simply. So now we are experiencing all three phenomena together. Situation is very crucial. Now there is another word, dry zone. What is meant by dry zone? Is it a climatic zone? I don't think. It's not a climatic zone. It is an agroclimatic zone defined for Sri Lanka. Is it an international definition? Went by international definitions? No. The definition is country specific. Can you imagine the set of criteria used to demarcate the dry zone and the wet zone of Sri Lanka? Different scholars, they have different ideas. It's not uniform. But one thing is very clear. The demarcation done initially in somewhere in 1950s and transitional zone called intermediate between dry and wet done by Dr. C.R. Panbok in 1964. Are we going to believe that those demarcations done somewhere in 1950s and 1960s are still valid even today? If it is the case, no point of discussing about the climate change. So what we have done is all subdivisions. We never challenge those boundaries. I think time has come to revisit those boundaries and redefine those boundaries. And why don't we go by the international definition of climatic zoning? That's possible. There is another opportunity. Time has come to go by those international definitions also. And there is a better word I should suggest for the researchers. That's word called agroecology. What is agroecology? Agroecology is a combination of agroclimatology plus hydrology. May give a better meaning, and based on top of that, you can build up a lot of hypotheses. So, if you in things like social research, I don't advise them to go by complicated, definitions and equations. They can go by a very simple definition. That one of the simple criteria that we can use is the number of wet months. What is wet months and what is dry month? What are the criteria used to define wet months and the dry month in Sri Lanka? Agronomists use one method and hydrologists use another method, but the resultant is almost same. Therefore, no harm that you can any method. As an example, I should say, if your concern is the tea crop, basically, ideal condition is we are supposed to establish 10 to 12 wet months, but minimum 10. If your concern is sugar cane, ideal is 10, but minimum 8 wet months are required. If you want to practice the dry zone agriculture in Sri Lanka, we are supposed to establish 3 consecutive dry months. So this type of various norms we have already developed in Sri Lanka. That is, I think, good rather than going by rainfall volume. So we can use that particular parameter. So adaptation and resilience that they use. Adaptation has 2 levels, level 1 application and level 2 adaptation. So it is better to distinguish level 1 application from level 2 application because the repercussions and consequences are different and also the solutions are also different. So, but we should not forget that adaptation does not sustain alone. For research it is true, but in reality it is not. The most appropriate terminology is the resilience. What is resilience? You don't go by the definition given by the Oxford Dictionary. Always go by the definition given by the scientists. Resilience have 5 main components. First one is the adaptive capacity. It always refers to the community. There is another thing called coping capacity. It always refers to the ecosystem. Always you have a balanced society as well as the ecosystem. We tend to believe that human can change the ecosystems. That is true. But we should not forget that humans are part and parcel of the ecosystem and we are governed by the ecosystems. So third one is the transition capacity. Fourth one is the threshold one is the rebound capacity. Rebound capacity in the sense we know that we experienced tsunami and after 2 years later, we were able to recover most of the damages. That is called the rebound capacity. You know, the integration of all 5 elements will conclude the term called resilience. May I ask one question? This particular study is highly concerned about the village irrigation systems, minor tanks in this country. There are nearly 15,000 village tanks scattered in the dry and intermediate zone, and more than 15,000 are abandoned in the thick jungle. So, what is this? Is it an adaptation strategy, or it is not an adaptation strategy? It is permanent. It is a part of transition process. So, there is another term, vulnerability. Vulnerability means it is a combination of exposure, sensitivity, and adaptability mitigation measures. We have to consider all three. Then there is another 2 words that we have emphasized: floods and droughts. Do you believe that all floods and droughts are climate induced? I don't believe. Because what is flood? Flood is a generation of surface runoff, that means overland flow. Once the water falls onto the ground, it happens. It's a part of the part of the water cycle, the land phase of water cycle. The soil, land use and land cover plays a major role in generating floods and drought that we should not forget. So, it has some typologies. One example is a minor flood. Minor flood has nothing to do with the climate. It is mainly due to the geometry of the Earth's surface. The major flood has some relation with the climatic parameters. And take the next one is the drought. Drought, you have the meteorological droughts, hydrological droughts, agricultural droughts, socio-economic droughts. There's a typology. Why do we describe all typologies? Because the term is say maybe the drought, but the consequences are different. The solutions are different. Therefore, it is necessary to distinguish those typologies. But may I ask another question? Which organization is responsible to declare those typologies? And what are the set of criteria we establish to identify those typologies? There's a huge policy gap. Even in the case of floods, floods should be defined by the term called base flood elevation all over the world that is accepted. In Sri Lanka, do we use the term, this particular technical approach to define the floods? We used nearly 1,000 years back. Now, of course, it is not. Time has come to go by this type of new interventions and policy measures, I believe. And there is another thing called hotspots. Take one example, the drought. Some droughts occur at the same place at a given frequency. So how can we define? Is it the same now compared to some other place? If you are undertaking a research study, I think the interpretation is completely different. There are some places with drought with statistical consistency. The Department of Agrarian Services has declared by using 40 years past drought data, the drought consistency geographical location, we call it as drought hotspots, in terms of different confidence levels, 90, 92, and 95. We can use that data set in this type, even for this type of sociological studies, I believe. And recommendations, I think one of the main concern is the crop diversification. We discussed this matter even in 1980s, but the result is insignificant. My personal opinion is that we should go by the soil, water, crop, and market relation. The soil plays a major role in crop diversification. I kindly request young researchers that please believe soil as the mother in this study, in this approach. and water as the father. You can't simply divorce this father and mother because they are highly integrated. So, and also, I should not forget to state the name of the prominent scientist, international scientist, who introduced the concept of Great Soil Group for country of Sri Lanka, Dr. C.R. Panavoki, with my regards. So, information. Always the adaptation is time bound. Therefore, information is one of the key intervention. And we are supposed to have long-term statistics. We are supposed to have real-time and near real-time data. We are supposed to have ground truth data, and also we are supposed to have traditional technologies. So this type of efficient information management system is essential to disseminate at the grassroots level to overcome and the difficulties due to climate change. And so what is this? Now they have done a good piece of work. I appreciate it. They have collected a fair amount of data and information. That is very much useful. But I have two recommendations. One is what you have done is to understand what is happening today. That is very much important. But do not focus on the same. Always focus on what will happen in the future. Maybe 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years in the future. Because of the nature of climate change. If you focus on today's situation, maybe most probably your solutions will lead for redundation. So, what is the importance of this type of sociological research? So we can understand, we can discover the social problems and its priorities. That is very much important. But if we are really concerned about the solutions, my opinion is that we should go by the ecological studies. That is the way of realizing the solutions for sociological problems. And finally, the one is the bioremediation. In senior, we call it as DIALOG. Very good example is the riverine buffers, the village tank ecosystem. We call Katakaduwa, Gaskomana, this Bamber, Iswatia, Mutun, all these things. What is this? Is it an adaptation strategy or this those are man-made ecosystems, time-tested man-made ecosystems to minimize or eradicate the adverse effects of climate-induced parameters. Time has come to study all these things and identify the replication potential and go beyond. And I would like to conclude my summarized presentation by saying, past is never dead and not even past, my dear friends. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Engineer, for giving us some broad understandings and definitions for some terms, because for example, resilience, the word that we are using for the dialogue also, we have been thinking only about the rebound capacity. But of course, you did say that there are 5 parameters like ecology and the economics and so on and so forth, and so on. Thank you very much. My burning question that I have is, as an engineer, there are some techniques of conserving irrigating water that are not available all the time, like the micro irrigation systems that have been introduced. But we say that the adoption rate, I'm not using adoption rates are very low. What can we do at the ground level to get these things more adopted, if you like? Is it only an economic question, no finances, or is it something else?
I think in my case, I read the number of books and number of publications and many things, but I learned water management from the farmers in this country. Very good example is the wet and dry, alternative wet and dry system. I now alternate wet and dry system. Now when I went to Anuradhapura in 1980s, it was there under the mine irrigation systems. They make use the depletion of soil moisture in the soil strata and try to replenish it by practicing the rotational system of irrigation. Those water saving techniques are, infinite number of water saving techniques are inherited to our traditional irrigation system. The thing is not, the mistake is not towards the farmers, it is towards the bureaucrats and the government intervention. We never appreciate, we never evaluate, we never assess the importance and the replication potential of such important practices. And we wait until they simply give up those things due to social, economic, and environmental pressure. I think there's a thing called heritage, agriculture and irrigation heritage. Heritage is a one that is, we learn from the past and we should preserve for the future. Time has come to list out all these irrigation water saving techniques that was adapted during the past and understand the scientific basis of such interventions and introduce for the future. That is my answer.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, I think now we can open the discussion to the House. Of course, we are really running out of time, so let us take some just few questions. Let's see whether we can give some answers. That's it. Please identify yourself also.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much to the panelists. My name is Stan Kaziboni. Just one question for Dr. Rupe Sana. You mentioned quite a lot around value chains and food production. One question is around post-harvest losses. I think just moving around Sri Lanka, you see a lot of wastage. And this is something that I find quite striking because Sri Lanka has potential to literally export a lot of food overseas. I think some of the fruits and some of the products of Sri Lanka are probably the best in the world. How can we stimulate production so that it's export oriented and also that smallholder farmers get a fair share for their work? Thank you.
So thank you very much for the question. Post-harvest losses. We all know that people are talking about the post-harvest losses 30-40%, but there is no any strong evidence to support that. Even in the past we had, now we have some kind of what is we call marketing channel competition is going on. In the past we had a Colombo-based commission system. That system, nobody is care about the quality, but now we have a different value chain. Then that value chain, people are care about the quality, and wastage is now according to when you take a supermarket value chain, only 5% is the wastage. Maybe I agree that we have a quality problem. Quality wastage is very high. One major reason is post-harvest management problem. Because people do not care about the quality in the harvesting. Sometimes farmers harvest not the right time, that type of thing there. In the value chain also we have so many layers, 5-6 layers, but in what is the now system in the global chain is we are reducing the number of layers in the system by mostly now it is running we call digital marketing or e-marketing system is going on. Directly linked with the farmers, with the end users, and also some countries now practicing farmer, then retailer, then consumer. No longer that wholesale people are there. When we reduce the chain, definitely we can improve the quality. I know that now what we need is the consumers are talking about they need convenience product. they need quality product at reasonable price. But that is the quality we need about the safety as well as nutrition. I think what we need is post-harvest improvement of post-harvest management as well as extension. I think I answered your question correctly. Okay, then.
Thank you. My name is Deborah Sekra. I'm a clinical consultant in gender and social inclusion, and I'm here representing the Center for Population Research with my colleague, Professor Rahman. I have a number of questions and comments generated from the initial video itself, but I will reduce the questions and comments I make over the time. One of the things that I appreciate is the emphasis on the focus on women and children in the context of addressing agrarian communities or agricultural communities. But in a sense, the disjuncture I observed in the report that I sort of quickly went through is that degree of focus and that level of disaggregation in terms of gender when addressing the communities is not adequately reflected in terms of the policy recommendations that is articulated in this document. And I think that really is a serious gap, because I think we need to bring in that level of disaggregation and that level of granularity in the research, in the policy recommendations, because if we do not, then we are not adequately and appropriately addressing the gender-based needs of the very farming communities that we have been researching, and that we hope the policy recommendations and the actions will improve their situation. So I think that is something that we need to really sharpen in terms of our policy recommendations. Unless we refer to communities, we refer to farmers, whereas we need to refer to the fact that there are females in agriculture, and there are female farmers and female producers of agricultural crops, as well as male agricultural producers. And unless we have that degree of disaggregation articulated in our policies, we will not actually benefit those people. That's one point. The other thing is that was generated through the video was that we saw these farmers complaining about human elephant conflict, monkeys coming into crops. We need to not only look at the point of view of the farmers and farming communities, we also need to look at the other perspectives of the situation of wildlife and the erosion of their habitats and the impact of climate change in relation to access to food and water for those animals, which is why they come into farming communities. So unless those two approaches go hand in hand, I don't think we are going to resolve that problem. So, one quick question. I noticed a picture of a rainwater harvesting tank in the video. Now, this stuff has been going on for the last 30 years, but I didn't hear any mention of rainwater harvesting in relation to climate change and water resource management in the context of the presentation. So I just want to find out what is the status of this particular technology or methodology.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think I don't think the panelists can answer the question, but these concerns have to be taken up more in the second phase of the research study, I believe. Can we ask some of the researchers to give a comment on that? What she is saying is that more in-depth analysis of gender and children's impact has been studied on the one hand, right? Yeah, and it should be brought into very sharply into policy. That's correct. The second one is about the different methods of water conservation, like rainwater harvesting and so on, which has not been adequately covered in the research. That's what I think she's telling. So can one of the researchers give some comment on that, please? Or that can be, because we know it's only one season that it has been collected so far. There's another season that data is collected. Please.
Yeah, for the gender consideration, I think we can do further analysis based on our data. We will, thank you for pointing out that. We will consider it and we will include that section as well. And for the rainwater harvesting and rainwater harvesting, I think in my presentation, I also highlighted there is a huge potential, but they are not using that. The rainwater harvesting tanks as well as the, we call it, patas, we call it small, I don't know what is the English term, patas. Yes, runoff rainwater harvesting ponds that can be easily adopted in the field level. And I have pointed out that the adoption of those kind of strategies are very low in all studied locations. So thank you for your point, madam. We will consider and incorporate those things into our report.
Yeah, just that I want to make a comment because rainwater harvesting has been pointed out. I mean, I was in fact surprised in your presentations. Rainwater harvesting has not been really, I mean, you have not taken that into all, as you say, that the sample that you have selected. There is no rainwater harvesting, but I must say, there are over 49,000 tanks in the country right now. Smaller tanks at your household. There are a large number of other tanks, larger tanks, right, in hospitals and so rainwater harvesting tanks has been a major source of water supply to rural communities in Sri Lanka. And that is for domestic use as well as home now. And that has been established very well. So I think we should discuss about it and find out, because those are the areas, in fact, rainwater harvesting tanks are being developed. Because I'm talking about it, I've been one of the pioneers in that. For the last 26 years, we have been doing the rainwater harvesting. And like Mundra, Hambantota, Kirinokshi, Bulatu, these areas, there are a large number of tanks. And I was really surprised to see that none of these things came out in your presentation.
There are some tags, but most of them are abandoned. They are not using, especially in the Timbalandu area. We have seen that. We have also shared that photo here as well. They are using dark pits in the paddylands to get the drinking water. And in their house, they have a rainwater harvesting tank. And we asked them, why don't you use this one? But they are not using it. That is why we highlighted that it is important to make the awareness as well. They have some issues like that.
Yeah, I know there's management is a major issue because when the gutters break or something like that, they don't do anything about it. Otherwise, there's a big potential for rainwater harvesting for domestic as well as small scale.
Thank you for that. I think we are really running out of time. Last question by
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry for taking the floor again. There are two to three comments. One thing about the study that has already been done, as you said, it's just one season study and more work to be done. But the important point is outcomes with respect to policy solutions that we are provided. They are quite similar to when you look at many past studies that have been done. That's a good thing about it. That means we are capturing the problem correctly. And issue is how many more times that we are going to capture the same problem like this in the future. So my point is that if you are confident about the recommendations that have been given, provincial adaptation planning is being done right now at every province. There are 3 cycles of discussions that have been held. So if you can get these ideas inbuilt into the provincial adaptation plan, I'm sure the implementation of whatever the outcomes will be quite quick in the Sri Lankan conditions. So that's a big move towards having these provincial adaptation plans. So please consider that once again. The second point related to the study and based on the questions came from the audience. What I see, Chansa, we are not considering the food system as a whole. I mean, you look at all the segments made by the members in the panel also. That means from the time the input supply is done until the time the waste generated out of the plate of the consumer is managed. This chain will have to be looked into. If we try to find solutions for bits and pieces, we'll never end up, there'll be no solution for food security per se. So if you can consider this component, good to look at the household food security, but if you are considering national level contribution, look at this food system. See how we can reduce food miles. That's one of the things that were brought up by many people. So if the food miles can be reduced, if the wastage can be reduced, losses can be reduced, and then the consumer price is going to be lower, while the farmer is getting a good price at the very beginning. So this chain link is the one that is important. Where research channels and quickly, an FAO study was completed all island in 25 districts. It will very soon not go into full level publication, but will appear in the websites as well. Trying to look at these things, that let's keep that aside, but at least this study that you are doing on will continue for next season. It can be muscle up further to incorporate all these food system components, take every nodal point and see how they can be strengthened to make sure overall food security is achieved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that intervention. I do hope the researchers will take all this into consideration when they complete their study. I think another years of data have to be collected and so on. In the interest of time, I think I have to close this session unless one has one last intervention. No? Thank you very much. This session is concluded.
We thank the ladies and gentlemen of the panel and the audience members for their questions as well, but we thank most of all our panel moderator, Dr. Abir, who I now have to invite to the podium to deliver today's concluding remarks.
Thank you. This is a tough call, trying to give some concluding remarks, especially given that this study is still on the one hand, as well as we heard from the podium, from the audience, that there are certain things that need to be looked into, and so on. However, having read the things, the drafts that have been sent to us and so on, I just collected a few items that I thought will be useful to say as concluding remarks. Of course, not concluding remarks, some comments, that might be thought as highly quality. So I have looked at, for example, climate adaptive farming practices as one aspect, and a couple of things that it was highlighted in the report was that as far as climate adaptive farming practices are concerned, the first point is the potential policy recommendations or adjustments are needed in the face of climate change with special reference to efficient water management. Now, this is very important because the last few comments that we have talked about rainwater harvesting and using irrigation systems and so on has to be really thought, because we are in for long-term drought as well as long-term floods in the coming months. So it's all about efficient water management. So policy recommendations are needed there. The second point is the significance of adopting, not adapting, I'm talking about adoption of climate adaptive farming practices based on recommendations provided by extension services and service providers and so on. Here what I meant was that we know a lot of new technological innovations are there, which can be used for climate mitigation. We are talking about micro-irrigation and different farming mixtures, as well even reducing harvest losses and so on. But where we found that in the adaptation techniques that were used, very few technological adoptions have been used by the farmers. Very few. Obviously, there are implications as far as availability of finances and so on. So these are things that have been looked into, because very much importance of adopting new technologies absolutely essential if we are going into a regime of climate change in the future. The third aspect is the necessity for policy adjustments and enhancements to promote efficient agricultural marketing, including pricing systems, because we are a risk-averse society. Farmers are more risk-averse than the normal public for that matter. So nobody is going to take any risk by changing their cropping pattern or cropping mix or any technology unless he or she is assured of a market and a price and so on. So this is an area that has to be looked into, where we have been neglecting and we are always complaining prices are high, things are not available, people are starving and so on and so forth. So marketing and pricing is an important aspect that has to be considered
if you are talking about climate mitigation as well. On the household food security, I have just noted one point. Noted the importance of involving a discussion of existing policy interventions targeting women and child nutrition, coupled with a consideration of the urgent need for potential policy adjustments to enhance the effectiveness. Because we always talk about that funding from the government for children's food in the education system and so on and so forth. But these are serious issue as far as nutrition is concerned. We heard from the doctor that not only malnutrition, but obesity is also there. So that's a huge thing. And also, one good thing that I learned from here was we always say do some home gardening, and it's all about planting some chilies. And it's not the most nutritious vegetable, I believe. So I think this is another thing that we have to think when we are talking about home gardening. What should be in the home garden? It's not about a couple of chilies here and there, a couple of bottles here and there, and so on. That is what is happening, but that is not to the nutritional problems of our children and so on. That's one point. So on the impact on women and children, I just noted a couple of points. Noted the importance of access to knowledge and opportunities for women for skills development. So it was very much noted by Ms. Madhavi also, that, although macro indicators show that women are much better off than men as far as education levels are concerned, as well as some of the health indicators are, but when you really dig into, then their contribution is much lower. It should be higher if their skills development and access to knowledge is there. So this is one area that we have to think, because our social structure is very, very, what should I say, bound, if I may call it. How can we release out of this, get released out of this social structure and get women also involved very much in skills as well as contributing to the economy. The last factor is the need for policy adjustments and enhancement for proper designing and implementation of gender-sensitive and child-centric climate action. This is what we heard from that lady, Ms. Jaman, I think, who also said that, we need more analysis and see that gender-sensitive policies are looked into very in-depth, if I may call it. Just without saying that, okay, women also should be considered, that kind of work is not good enough, that it should be focused, and so on and so forth. So I think those are the little take-home points that I took from this seminar. I think, I hope that will be useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Abhiratna. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the conclusion of the panel discussion and the concluding remarks following that session. What needs to be highlighted, I think, at this point is that, as I mentioned earlier, the bulk of the research that is produced and disseminated at think tanks and universities go largely unnoticed if they're not taken into consideration at the policy making level. But what I understood from the panel discussion is that it's not necessarily at the policy making level that there is a gap, but there's a much larger gap at the policy implementation level. So I hope, as Prasad mentioned, to reiterate what Prasad mentioned, how many more times must the problem be captured before we look at how the policy can be better implemented? Maybe not. It's not in the making process, it's in the implementation process. So maybe in the future, in Kandy, where I live, my vegetables won't go past me from Morelli all the way to Dambulla before it comes back to me in Kandy. So hopefully maybe that is my future. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of today's proceedings. I extend my final invitation of the day to Ms. Sydney Pereira, Director of Strategy and Evidence of World Vision Lanka, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you with a profound sense of gratitude as the Director of Strategy, Learning and Evidence at World Vision Lanka. Today marks a momentous occasion as we express our thanks for the collaborative effort that have brought us to this juncture. following the research assessing climate change vulnerabilities and adaptive practices in the Sri Lankan farming communities in the dry zone. First and foremost, I extend our heartfelt appreciation to our research partner, the Hector Kovakaluwa Agrarian Research and Training Institute, whose invaluable contributions have been instrumental in shaping the impactful outcomes of the research study. Furthermore, I extend our gratitude to all the authorities, institutions, and also individuals who generously share insights, reflecting with us and enriching the depth and relevance of this study. In the spirit of collaboration, World Vision Lanka has been steadfast in its commitment to addressing the vulnerabilities caused by climate change. As highlighted by our National Director, we have actively participated in global forums such as COP28, where we not only committed ourselves to this cause, but also advocated for more ambitious measures. The urgency to accelerate action in tackling the climate crisis was emphasized with a particular safeguarding the future of our children. At the local level, World Vision has prioritized participatory-based research, recognizing the significance of the crux of climate issues affecting the Sri Lankan community. Our collaboration with various state sector entities underscores our commitment to strategize and tackle these issues collectively. We are also currently exploring avenues to integrate these insights into our livelihood sector programming in our area programs, ensuring a more holistic approach to building resilience within the communities we serve. As we progress, let's not see this research study as a conclusion, but rather as a driving force for many more future initiatives. World Vision Lanka remains dedicated to building partnerships that move beyond boundaries, creating a collective impact on the lives of those most affected by climate change. In closing, I express our deepest gratitude to each one of you for your unwavering support and collaboration. Together, we can continue to make strides towards a more resilient, sustainable, and equitable future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pereira. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of today's event, but not to the end of the war that we must wage and change. So in light of this, World Vision Lanka and Party together are giving each of you a seed pod that you may take home with you and hopefully get started on the home garden. Funnily enough, that seed pod also happens to be chilies. Maybe chilies can be your start. So please don't forget to collect the seed pods as you walk out. Lunch will be served to every one of you. You're all invited to lunch. Lunch will be served at the lavender and tulip halls right across this. That's it from me for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you and have a pleasant day.